Action on immigration. We look at the possibilities of the president's plan and gauge reaction to it. Campus shootout. Police shoot and kill a gunman who injures 3 at Florida State University. Who pays for abortion? A new website pinpoints health plans that cover the cost of elective abortions. And addressing hunger, helping the poor who don't have enough to eat. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, November 20th, 2014. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Well, the president's executive order on immigration just might spark one of the fiercest partisan battles of his presidency. The order could shield as many as 5 million undocumented people from deportation. Chief White House correspondent Suzanne LaFranchi reports tonight. Suzanne?
Well, Brian, the president will speak to the nation this Thursday evening where he will unveil the details of his immigration plan. He will do so through using executive powers, bypassing Congress.
The plan could also expand worker visas for certain sectors like technology, an issue Obama touched upon during a White House ceremony honoring inventors.
Part of staying competitive in a global economy is making sure that we have an immigration system that doesn't send away talent but attracts it.
Speaking on the Senate floor, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell vowed to reverse any unilateral action by the White House.
If President Obama acts in defiance of the people and imposes his will on the country, Congress will act. We're considering a variety of options. But make no mistake, when the newly elected representatives of the people take their seats, they will act.
Obama's measures could make as many as 5 million people eligible for work permits, extend deportation protections to parents of U.S. citizens and permanent residents who've lived here for at least 5 years, and likely expand a 2012 White House program that halted deportations for younger immigrants. But this action will not likely include protection for their parents. Democrat Harry Reid says inaction by Congress forced the president's hand.
The president's decision is not a political victory. It's a victory for families. We know well that this decision is not a permanent solution. It is a first step.
Pro-immigration organizations held a joint news conference today. While generally pleased with the executive order, many are concerned the action doesn't do enough.
We also are mindful that there are many worthy immigrants that could have been included that are not included. We believe that the president could have gone bigger.
Pro-immigration leaders say at the end of the day it will take an act of Congress to have a permanent solution. A Wall Street Journal NBC poll shows that nearly half of all Americans oppose the president using executive powers on this issue. Brian?
All right, Suzanne LaFranchi at the White House tonight. And Judy Conte with the National Employment Law Project is a Catholic lawyer representing immigrant workers for 15 years. Of course, the U.S. bishops have expressed support for this executive action. What would you say is the moral basis for that?
There are 2 really prime moral bases right here. Unification of families, making sure that families can stay together in this country as a unit, which is something the bishops have been so outspoken on. And the sanctity and dignity of work, the right for people to earn a living so that they can support themselves and support their families. 2 of the prime tenets of Catholic social justice teachings.
Is there a connection between life and immigration, the pro-life stance?
Absolutely. Look, pro-life is a belief that from conception through natural death, everybody has a right to life and a right to support themselves, to have their basic needs met. And if we don't allow immigrants the right type of inflows of immigration so that they can support themselves and their families and meet their basic needs, if we are separating families from each other and wrenching them apart in ways that don't affirm the dignity of life, we're not acting in pro-life ways.
Let's look quickly at the law. You teach law at Georgetown and some other universities around the D.C. area. Is the president within his legal rights to issue this order?
He absolutely is. The fact of the matter is there is not enough money appropriated for the president and the Department of Homeland Security to enforce and deport everybody who is here illegally. And this is not just President Obama, this is every president before him. They have all acted to set enforcement priorities and then work in accordance with them. So he's really just using the well-established precedent to be able to decide what are the most enforcement priorities and to act upon them.
So how do you think this might affect jobs for American citizens, though? I know that's a concern.
It is. This is actually something we believe is going to raise the bar. As long as there are undocumented workers who can be exploited and work in an underground economy where employers don't pay them wages, don't take their safety seriously, then there's always somebody that can go to the low road. And that drives down conditions not just for undocumented brothers and sisters, but for lawful permanent residents, citizens, and American workers as well. We enforce the floor for all workers, whether documented or not, so that the working conditions and the jobs that are available are better for everyone.
Judy Conte with the National Employment Law Project. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for asking me tonight.
Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. We find out tonight that roughly 400,000 fewer people have signed up for Obamacare than the administration has been reporting. Well, meanwhile, two pro-life groups say other facts are hidden in the Affordable Care Act's online marketplaces. Jason Calvi reports.
Brian, the Pro-Life Family Research Council and the Charlotte Lozier Institute, a pro-life research think tank, say the law contains taxpayer funding for abortion. Now, today, those groups unveiled a new website that they say exposes which health plans cover abortion and those that don't. The site is obamacareabortion.com. Click on your state, and you see a list of the health plans on the Obamacare exchanges and whether the pro-life groups say those plans have abortion coverage or not. The site was introduced on Capitol Hill today. Researcher Genevieve Plaster and New Jersey Representative Chris Smith say it's really difficult to figure out which plans have elective abortion coverage and which ones don't.
I found that calling the insurance companies were actually a lot of back and forth. It seemed like a wild goose chase. Calling the customer service representatives, they seem to have no information on the abortion coverage policy whatsoever.
I've gone on so many websites myself. And last year, looking for a Blue Cross or any plan, myself or my wife and I, it's just not revealed.
And so the site is designed to help people make morally informed decisions about affordable health care health plans. Congressman Smith sponsored a bill requiring insurance companies to fully disclose if their plans cover abortion. That bill has passed the House, and Smith is confident. He tells me that the new Republican Senate majority will take it up in the new term. Brian?
All right, thank you, Jason Calvi. And a federal appeals court decision today is keeping Mississippi's only abortion clinic open. The court decided it will not reconsider a 2012 ruling that said it was unconstitutional to require abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. It's unclear if the state will take the case to the Supreme Court. About 10 other states have laws requiring admitting privileges. Those laws have forced some clinics to close. Pope Francis calling on nations throughout the world to do more to help the poor and hungry. Speaking at a UN conference in Rome, the Holy Father demanded a more just global distribution of food. Wyatt Goolsby reports.
La persona que sufre los efectos del hambre y la desnutrición.
A challenge from Pope Francis while speaking on the subject of global hunger today at a UN conference in Rome. The Holy Father said access to food is a basic human right, but today it has been reduced to a commodity.
El hambriento está ahí, en la esquina de la calle, y pide carta de ciudadanía, pide ser considerado en su condición, recibir una alimentación de base sana. Nos pide dignidad, no limosna.
His speech came a day after more than 170 countries at the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization adopted new guidelines to prevent malnutrition and reduce levels of obesity. The numbers from the World Health Organization highlight the problem. 1/3 of the world's population suffers from nutritional deficiencies, the same kind that caused 45% of all child deaths last year. Roughly 1/3 of all the food that is produced is lost to waste and spoilage. But here's the issue. At the same time, 42 million children under 5 are overweight or obese. Today, the Holy Father recalled the words of St. John Paul II at the same conference, warning against the risk of the paradox of plenty. Francis, Benedict, and John Paul II have all warned about the problem of malnutrition. While many heads of state have committed to eliminating poverty, organizers at the conference say hearing the Pope's message adds something unique.
He put the moral element into those commitments. He reminded all of us, that we are a global community, well connected, that we do not have the right to waste food.
This meeting is not the first time Pope Francis has spoken about the plight of the poor and hungry. During his Easter address last year, he talked about the scourge of hunger, lamenting that the world's needy could be fed with all the food that's wasted. Brian.
Thank you, Wyatt. Well, classes at Florida State University were canceled today after a late-night shooting on that campus in Tallahassee. The gunman is identified as Myron May, a Florida State alumnus. Police say he opened fire shortly after midnight in the school's main library. Students scrambled for cover, but 3 people were shot. Tallahassee and University police killed May in a shootout. Today, Florida's governor asked people to keep the school and the victims in their prayers.
For that reason, I'm asking everyone on FSU's campus and everyone across our great state and even the nation to pray for FSU. Pray for our state and every student and family affected by this tragedy.
Police call this an isolated incident. FSU is offering counseling services to the students there. At least 8 people have died after a series of snowstorms hit the Buffalo, New York area. Now people there and across the Northeast are preparing for yet another band of heavy snow. Throughout the day, crews have been clearing roads. Several main highways in western New York have been blocked. The Buffalo area has seen nearly 6 feet of snow the last 3 days. Buffalo's Mercy Catholic Hospital has been operating around the clock through the storms.
Our staff is just, the ones that stayed have been just incredible. And those that have volunteered to come in, we're getting calls at our command center. You know, I need a ride here, I can get there, can you pick me up? It's really been wonderful. Everyone has risen to the occasion.
New York's governor has declared a state of emergency with travel bans in effect. There's concern about a warm-up this weekend that could lead to extensive flooding. Well, the Knights of Columbus donating $2.2 million to help build housing for displaced Iraqi and Syrian religious minorities. The Christian Refugee Relief Fund donation will help provide permanent housing for displaced families in the region. New homes will be built on property owned by the Chaldean Catholic Archdiocese of Erbil in Kurdish-controlled northern Iraq. Supreme Knight Carl Anderson says the plight of so many Christian refugees prompted the Knights' fundraising efforts.
We were learning many firsthand accounts. There are tens of thousands of refugees driven out of their homes at the point of a gun with death threats. They're living today in the open. They're living in hallways. They're living in abandoned buildings. There are 3 or 4 families living together in a classroom in Christian schools. And winter is coming.
Construction could begin as early as next month. Donations are still being accepted at kfc.org/donate. We want to mention we're grateful to the Knights of Columbus for providing financial support to EWTN for News Nightly. Coming up, author and blogger Austin Ivory gives us a look inside the dynamic Vatican Conference on Marriage that just wrapped up in Rome. On Thursday, the 20th of November, this is EWTN News Nightly. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. What will happen next with those democracy protesters in Hong Kong? Well, some groups still hold spots on city streets, but police are expected to clear those sites soon. The protest started about 2 months ago. Protesters are angry about a central committee picking candidates for a city election bypassing direct elections. It's the most blatant challenge to China's leadership since taking over Hong Kong in 1997. The head of a South Korean ferry company is sentenced to 10 years in prison following a shipwreck that killed more than 300 people, many of them students. That sentence follows long-term sentences for 15 crew members involved in the April tragedy. The company and crew were seen as being too lax about safety, leaving passengers to fend for themselves when the ship capsized and began to sink. Many of the victims were high school students on a field trip. Pope Francis met with some of the victims' families when visiting Korea in August. Add South Carolina and Montana to the growing list of states where same-sex couples can now legally marry. The U.S. Supreme Court has refused to block gay marriages in South Carolina. Gay couples have begun exchanging vows in Montana, just a day after a federal judge threw out that state's ban. Montana Attorney General Tim Fox plans to appeal Wednesday's ruling. Well, as the move to redefine marriage grows, a Vatican conference focusing on marriage between one man and one woman just wrapped up in Rome. We're joined by the founder of Catholic Voices, Austin Ivory, author of a new Pope Francis biography, The Great Performer. He's joining us from Rome. And Austin, you tweeted that this Humanum conference is the wackiest, most creative and imaginative Vatican conferences ever. What do you mean by that?
Well, usually they'll put the words Vatican and conference together and, your eyelids begin to drop, and they're not generally newsworthy events. There's a lot of talk and not much else. This had videos, this had people from every possible religion. It was global, it was interreligious, it was a variety of styles. We had, heavy theological stuff. We had evangelical preachers raising the roof. We had a rabbi who gave one of the most amazing speeches I've heard. So it just was a dazzling display, really, of a different kinds of oratory and of messages, which was, and the sum total really was very uplifting and very creative. Yeah.
Well, certainly the church has been vocal about male-female complementarity in the past. Is the messaging different this time?
Yeah, I think what was different is that this was not a philosophical notion being explored. What they wanted to do in the conference was to bring out, if you like, the ecology of man-woman complementarity. So that we had a lot of rock and sea, maleness and femaleness in nature, and how actually the male-female bond, expressed, of course, ultimately in marriage, is a reflection of the divine design that runs through nature. That is compelling and that is beautiful. So that was expressed really in lots of different ways. In fact, the whole conference was an attempt to find a new language, a language which we haven't needed before, but we do now because Western culture particularly has lost a sense of the true meaning of marriage. So what this conference was about was saying, actually, let's get down to brass tacks. No longer argue, against things that aren't marriage, but what actually is marriage? What is it founded on? So lots of beautiful testimonies, particularly in these remarkable movies which were filmed in many, many different countries of the world, and many different kinds of people were speaking about their experience, if you like, of the fusion of these two dynamic elements in creation, which is maleness and femaleness.
And Austin, very briefly, how did Pope Francis set the tone for this conference? I understand he opened it.
Pope Francis, right at the beginning of the conference, talked about the crisis of marriage in the Western world, its impact, particularly on the poor, particularly on women, and particularly on children and the elderly. And he called for a new human ecology. So he set the tone, really. This is an ecological crisis. Now, he said, we as a world, as a humanity, have woken up to the fact that we've damaged the planet. We're now aware of that fact and we're doing something about it. What we haven't yet done is realize that there is a human ecological crisis, and we need to wake up to that for the sake of our humanity, for the sake of our culture. So it was a rallying cry, really, for a new movement to try and rescue the beauty and the integrity of creation, particularly in this element of marriage.
Austin Ivory, his new book, The Great Reformer on Pope Francis, is out very soon, and we appreciate you joining us from Rome tonight. Thank you, Austin.
That's really.
Up next, thousands of West African orphans are impacted by the deadly Ebola outbreak. We look at one family's struggle. Thanks for joining us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. On this Thursday, the 20th of November, and this week before Thanksgiving is National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Nationally, business leaders are supporting this cause. They are part of the Sleep Out campaign through Covenant House. It's one of the largest private agencies that provide food, shelter, and crisis care to homeless youth. Covenant operates in the U.S., Canada, and Latin America. The business leaders meet with kids at the group's crisis shelter, then spend the night outdoors in a show of solidarity. The president of Covenant House, Kevin Ryan, joining us from their New York City crisis shelter. Kevin, what are the business leaders in for tonight in your Sleep Out?
So tonight's the night. 1,000 leaders, 15 cities, 2 countries, and they are, for this special night, sleeping outside in solidarity with all of the homeless young people who don't have a circle of love around them or a safe place to be. It's a cold but very special thing that's going to happen tonight.
You've done this before. Does one night really make any kind of a difference?
Well, a couple things happen. One, the people of God, people of love come together and show the world that these kids matter, that they're not invisible to us, finding dignity and humanity in places where homeless kids hide, in alleyways and in tunnels and in vacant buildings. But it also raises an enormous amount of money. Tonight's sleep out in 15 cities across Canada and the United States is going to raise $5 million for Covenant House to feed and take care of 2,000 young people tonight and 56,000 young people every single year.
So you work specifically with young people. We just saw some new numbers this week that shows 1 in 30 American children is homeless. Is that problem getting worse?
It is getting worse. The truth of the matter is that there are in every one of the cities we work in the United States and Latin America and Canada, so many kids who we can't help. We have open intake, so every young person who comes in the front door gets a place to sleep, but that doesn't mean they get a bed. We have young people on cots tonight in New Orleans. We have kids who are sleeping on the floor in Hollywood, young people who are sleeping in heated tents in Detroit. So the truth of the matter is there are a lot of kids out there who need a safe place to be. We're doing our best, but it's very hard to meet the need.
Kevin, we've seen the snow and the winter there in western New York. What's it like in New York City, and how will that affect the sleep out?
It is cold. I have not been upset that I haven't had hair in a long time, but I'm a little upset about it right now, to be honest with you. It's 28 degrees here, but it's 19 degrees in Detroit and Toronto, where my friends will be sleeping out, and it's going to be 8 degrees in Anchorage, Alaska, where we'll be having our sleep out in a few hours there. So it's going to be tough in some places, but that's nothing compared to what our kids face every single day. We're sleeping on streets that our kids get to sleep on night after night after night. We get to come inside, we get bagels, we get to be warm in the morning. Our kids don't get that.
Well, we pray for a successful sleep out for you. Kevin Ryan, president of Covenant House, joining us from New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.
Well, the Ebola virus has orphaned thousands of West African children. The crisis also makes it more difficult for families here in the U.S. to adopt children from that area. Catherine Elliott shows us how one Seattle family is coping.
A happy little girl in her new American home. 2-year-old Favor and her twin sister Faith came from Liberia last December, adopted by the Sanborn family outside Seattle.
I think we fell in love pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. But their family isn't complete.
You want more?
They were able to bring the girls because Faith has medical needs, but they had to leave behind their big brother Divine for what they thought would be a couple months.
It was hard. Yeah. It's never a place a parent wants to be in. He's our son, and we love him. We pray for him daily. We talk about him.
Yes, food for Africa. Now the Ebola crisis has put all adoptions in affected countries on hold indefinitely. So the Sanborns have set up food drives. The supplies will help the organization that's caring for Divine and a growing number of children orphaned by Ebola.
And here are some of our children.
Patricia Anglin, the founder of Acres of Hope, also has traveled to the U.S. to raise emergency funds. She says 5-year-old Divine keeps asking about his family.
He's doing, I guess, as well as can be expected, but every day asks, when do I get to go? When do I get to go to America and be with my family?
Aid workers in West Africa now estimate that the number of Ebola orphans has grown to 7,000.
Long after Ebola is even eradicated, we will have the devastation and challenges left behind of these orphans who need to be cared for, and we can't do it alone.
The Sanborns worry about their son, who's been healthy so far, but they understand why they must wait.
Where we want to protect Divine, we know that there are so many other people that need to be protected.
When he can come home, they say they will welcome him with open arms. Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks for joining us tonight. Until tomorrow, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick, and we end tonight with moments from the Pope's visit today to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. Good night, and God bless you.